Hey, welcome back to the Amplified Podcast. We're glad to have you with us. My name is Jac Carnett. I'm your host, and we are walking through the story of Exodus. And as we're walking through, we're literally watching them walk through the Red Sea. And so if you missed the last episode, I highly recommend going back and watching it. But in our last episode, we talked about the Israelites actually walking through, on dry ground through the Red Sea. There's a wall of water on the right and the left, and they're able to go right up the center. But then the Egyptians follow them after, and as they're going through, the waters return back to where they were. And so that's where we were last episode. And now, basically where we left the Israelites, they're standing on the shoreline, seeing the dead Egyptians, seeing all of their oppressors and all of their slave drivers and all the people that wanted to kill them now laying dead at their feet, that their enemies have been subdued. All they had to do was remain calm and not panic, essentially. And so that's where we left them, and we're going to pick the story up right there with the song that they sing because of this moment. And so this moment calls for celebration. This is 400 years of slavery that's come to an end, or at least living in a foreign land. This is the liberation of God's people. This is the death of their enemies. This is everything that they could have hoped for and more. All this is happening right now. And so today we'll be examining Exodus 15 and Exodus 16. We're going to see how God starts to feed them in the desert all the way up to when the Lord starts to provide water for them. And so this is going to be a great episode, and I want to give a shout out to, there's a new show coming out on YouTube as well that is kind of like if this story was kind of directed like The Office, and so there's a lot of talking heads and it's a lot of satire and it's very funny, and their episodes are starting to come out right now and they're pretty good. And so shout out to them. I love that all of like the Bible stories are finally being made at like, Hollywood level, because for a long time it seemed like we just had, we had Christian movies and shows, but they were pretty low budget, pretty cheesy typically. But now you're getting things like The Chosen, you're getting the show on YouTube, and you're getting the Amplified Podcast, and you're getting what else? I was just thinking the House of David that's coming out on Amazon. And this isn't to say I agree with all of it. Obviously, I didn't agree with a lot of the Noah movie. But, maybe things are heading in the right direction. And so today we're going to be talking about what they did after the Egyptians died. And so if you could open up your Bible to Exodus 15, or you could open up your Amplified Bible. These are great. This is a hardback version here that I have on my desk of all the letters in the New Testament. So I don't think this includes Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, or Acts, but I think it's from there all the way through Revelation. It's just this beautiful book put together, kind of like a magazine. And so I highly recommend getting one of these. They're awesome, and you can follow along with us. And this first chapter is mostly a song. And funnily enough, I just preached on this at my church a few weeks ago, but the purpose of this podcast is less preaching and more just understanding what's happening in the timeline of the Bible. And so now they've entered into, or at least they're about to enter into the land that God has called them to go to. And this is their celebration moment. And so this is Exodus 15. And let's read it together. So the song of Moses and Israel. Then Moses and the children of Israel sang this song to the Lord, singing, quote, I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider is thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. This is my God, and I will praise him. My father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. The Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has thrown into the sea. His chosen captains are drowned in the Red Sea. The deep water covers them. Clad in armor, they sank to the depths like a stone. Your right hand, O Lord, is glorious in power. Your right hand, O Lord, shatters the enemy. In the greatness of your majesty, you overthrow and annihilate those adversaries who rise in rebellion against you. You send out your fury, and it consumes them like chaff. With the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The flowing waters stood up like a mound. The deeps were congealed in the heart of the sea, and the enemy said, I will pursue and I will overtake. I will divide and spoil. This is kind of a long song. It's okay. My desire shall be satisfied against them. I will draw my sword. My hand shall dispossess them and drive them out. But you blew them with your wind. The sea covered them. Clad in armor, they sank like lead in the mighty waters. So the first part of the song is talking about who God is and how great he is and how wonderful it is that this thing that they've done. And then this happens in a lot of Hebrew songs where you hear what the enemy was thinking, what the enemy was planning to do. Sometimes you hear quotes, and the enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake. And then you see how the story plays out. So it's almost like the beginning, you hear a synopsis of what's happened, that the Lord has been victorious. And then you get a little bit longer version of it, and you get to hear what God did in the process. So verse 11, who is like you among the gods, O Lord? Who is like you? Majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working in wonders. You stretched out your right hand, the sea swallowed them. You in your loving kindness and goodness have led the people whom you have redeemed. In your strength you have guided them with care to your holy habitation. The peoples have heard about you, they tremble. Anguish and fear has gripped the inhabitants of Philistia. Then the tribal chiefs of Edom were dismayed and horrified. And so now he's gone from what's happened now, so what's happened in the present, to so we're standing on the Red Sea right now, and they want to go into the promised land. And in the promised land, there's the Canaanites, and you have the Edomites, and you have the Jebusites. But the Lord is telling them through this psalm that those peoples are already terrified of them because of this moment, because they've rendered Egypt impotent. Tribal chiefs of Edom were dismayed and horrified. The mighty leaders of Moab, trembling grips them. All the inhabitants of Canaan have melted away in despair. Terror and dread fall on them because of the greatness of your arm. They're still as a stone until your people pass by into Canaan, O Lord, until your people pass by whom you have purchased. You will bring them into the land of promise and plant them on the mountain, Mount Moriah in Jerusalem of your inheritance. So it seems that, so plant them on the mountain. The mountain is used metaphorically all throughout the Bible, all the time. The Amplified Bible adds in Mount Moriah in Jerusalem, but it wouldn't be till David took the mountain later on that Mount Moriah would actually be, the place where that is the central part of their religion. Up until then, it was Mount Sinai. And so I guess I don't have anything else to say with that. That's just, it wasn't till David took over Jerusalem that they moved the capital there. The place, O Lord, you have made for your dwelling among them, the sanctuary, O Lord, which your hands have established. The Lord shall reign to eternity and beyond. End of the song. For the horses of Pharaoh went with his war chariots and charioteers into the sea, and the Lord brought back the waters of the sea on them. But the sons of Israel walked on dry land in the middle of the sea. Then Miriam the prophetess and the sister of Aaron Moses took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her with timbrels and dancing. Miriam answered them, "Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously and is highly exalted. The horse and his rider is hurled into the sea." Her song is much shorter. But that's them celebrating on the other side of the sea. And this, if you're ever maybe to write about, support for, this is going to get a little political, but you could even take this like support for the death penalty, that we have the God of life, who is life through and through, that is taking away lives in this moment of them being washed in the Red Sea. All these Egyptians, these are still lives, but their evil, their greed, their slavery, their hatred, their actions have actually forfeited their life. That life in the womb is precious because it just is. Bottom line, it just is. But also it's an example of innocence in this world. But you can do things in life like be an Egyptian soldier and follow Pharaoh all the way to where the Israelites are to take them back into slavery. that causes you to forfeit that life, forfeit the life. And it's through our actions. They followed them into the sea, and yes, the Lord brought the waters back over them. But this was justice for Israel to be set free and not be under slavery anymore. So you can kind of do what you want with that. That's kind of what I think about. But obviously the story is Israelites make it to the other side. The Egyptians don't make it to the other side. Verse 22. Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur. They went a distance of about 3 days, 33 miles in the wilderness, and found no water. So now they've gone 3 days out into this wilderness. Let's look at a map real quick. Let's look at a map. So let's look at a different one. They leave Goshen, they go through the Red Sea, and now they're moving towards Sinai, and they're moving 3 days into this wide open wilderness that is kind of south of where Israel is today, east of where Egypt is today, and obviously would have been then. People found no water. Then they came to Marah, but they could not drink its waters because they were bitter. Therefore, it was named Marah. The word Marah means bitter. The people grew discontent and grumbled at Moses, saying, "What are we going to drink?" Now, this is already the third time in these few short chapters that the people have complained and grumbled against Moses. At times, it's been for understandable reasons. Pharaoh doubling all of their labor. So they complained when Pharaoh doubled the labor. They complained when they were between Egypt and the Red Sea. And now they're complaining again because they have no water, as if the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire that's leading them doesn't know that they don't have enough water. Then the people grew discontent and grumbled at Moses, saying, "What are we going to drink?" So Moses cried out to the Lord for help, and the Lord showed him a tree, a branch which he threw into the waters and became sweet. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Then the Lord made a statute and an ordinance for them. There he tested them, saying, "If you will diligently listen to, pay attention to the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his sight, and listen to his commandments, and keep foremost in your thoughts, and actively obey all his precepts and statutes." In other words, hey, if you just do what I'm telling you to do, then I will not put any of the diseases which I have put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. Then the children of Israel came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 date palms, and they camped there beside the waters. And so, okay, let's talk about the branch first. So the branch that's thrown into the water, what is the significance of that? I think it all ties into the cross. We see that it's the cross of Christ that makes the bitterness of life and the bitterness of death sweet. Paul says death was swallowed up in this moment. And so I think it's just as the crossbeam on the house where the blood was put on the sides and on the top that caused the angel to pass over. I think we also see the branch which is thrown into the water. I think that's being thrown into the water is another symbol of, this tree that is taking what's bitter and making it sweet. And so just as Christ took our lives from bitterness to sweet, I think this is another great example. And just in a few chapters, we're going to see the Israelites are grumbling again, and he has Moses put a bronze snake on a wooden staff and hold it up. And if people look at it, then they'll be healed. And that's the idea that Jesus becomes sin. He takes on the weight of the world's sin while hanging on this wooden beam. And when we look at him, when we really make him Lord and put our faith and trust in him, then he takes the bitterness of this world and makes it sweet. He takes the bitterness of our lives and makes it better. The same thing is here. And Andrew Womack talks about this a lot in his preaching, but the idea that if we would actually live by God's commands, that the diseases of this world, the sickness of this world would have no effect on us. That if we follow after what God's called us to do and we don't get into things that we're not supposed to get into. A lot of diseases can be traced back to people doing horrific practices that brought together two things that never should have been together, that created an outbreak or a disease. But if we would follow God's commands, and much of this is not even our own fault. A lot of disease that exists today has existed for a long time, that we had no part in creating as this current generation, but we're dealing with the after effects of maybe the evil of what came before. But the Lord is sovereign, and the Lord can do far more. The Lord is not under the weight of disease, and so the Lord can protect us all the same. So we see this in our church, we see this as being still true for us today, that if we will follow after what God calls us to do, if we will listen to his precepts, if we will do what God asks us to do, then he'll keep the diseases of this world away from us. And Andrew Womack has been teaching this for 50 years, and he'll say confidently, as I want to say it as confidently as he does, that I can't get sick. That's a huge statement to make, and he has 50 years of not getting sick to back it up, and so he has a lot more evidence than I do. But even as I've started to follow after the Lord more closely and try to listen to this verse more, I just don't get sick the way I used to anymore, and if I do, it's very mild. And so, man, do what God's called you to do, and the promises that God's promised will fall to you as well. That's my answer to that. So chapter 16, this is where the Lord's going to start to provide food for them, and the Sabbath is going to be instituted for the very first time. And so they're living in this kind of Sinai wilderness right here on our map. Nobody's around. There are no threats. Egypt's not chasing after them. Nobody inhabits this land because it's pretty much, you can't grow anything. It's uninhabitable. And so this is what it says in chapter 16. They set out from Elim, and all the congregation of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin. This is has no connection to our English version of the word sin, so those aren't connected at all. It's just called Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day, the second month after they had left the land of Egypt. So it's taken them about 45 days to get here. It's a lot of people. The whole congregation of Israelites grew discontented and murmured and rebelled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. So let's keep a little tally just for fun. So now this is the fourth time that they've grumbled against Moses in just a matter of, let's say 3-4 months. Okay. And the Israelites said to them, "Would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat and ate bread until we were full. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this entire assembly with hunger." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I will cause bread to rain from heaven for you. The people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, so that I may test them to determine whether or not they will walk in obedience in my instruction and my law." So the Lord is taking the first step. He's giving them all the food that they can need, but they're only supposed to collect what they need for one day at a time. We're supposed to thank the Lord for our daily bread. There are some tasks that we're only supposed to do enough for one day. You don't need to shower 15 times today in hopes that you'll be clean for the next 15 days. It's not how it works. You shower each day. And if there's any middle school boys out there watching this, or my youth group, you need to shower every day. And just like you need to eat every day, and the Lord's going to provide every single day. But it's funny how they're already starting retroactively to twist, even within 45 days, their memory of slavery. And we sat by pots of meat and ate bread until we were full. They're already starting to kind of romanticize their time in Egypt as if like that was really great and this is really horrible. Fact of the matter is, you were a slave. You couldn't go where you wanted to go. You couldn't do what you wanted to do. You couldn't leave whenever you wanted to. I don't even know if they gave them money. I think probably just they were provided state bread. You living off the government cheese. You just romanticizing this time in your life when now you have actual freedom and you can go and do something great for yourself. And yet you're looking back on slavery as if that's where I want to go back to. And they're going to do that several times, where they're remembering with fondness their time in Israel or in Egypt. And it's pretty sick and twisted, in fact, what they're doing. And so here it is. This is the Sabbath being set up. And it shall be that on the 6th day you shall prepare to bring in twice as much as they gather daily, so that they will not need to gather on the 7th day. So on Saturday, you're going to go out and you're going to get twice as much food, twice as much bread, manna as you normally would. And then tomorrow on Sunday, you won't go out and gather any, because there won't be any out there. So Moses and Aaron said this to all of Israel: at evening you shall know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord. For he hears your murmurings, your complainings against the Lord. What are we that you murmur and rebel against us? Moses said, this will happen when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning enough bread to be fully satisfied, because the Lord has heard your murmurings against him. For what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord. And so Moses was already starting to set up this system where you're not mad at me and you're not complaining at me. You're actually complaining against the Lord, because this is his plan all along. So it's kind of a take it up with him kind of mindset. But Moses is saying that, I represent something greater that has done greater things for you. And then Moses said to Aaron, say to all the congregation of Israel, approach the Lord, because he has heard your murmurings. We've heard this word like 4 or 5 times now. This is a complaining generation. You have to think they've been slaves all their lives. I have no idea how even educated they are. They could all be at a 2nd grade level for all I know. And so this is a very immature population that doesn't seem to have a very good memory either. So it happened as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of Israel, they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory and the brilliance of the Lord appeared in the cloud. Then the Lord said to Moses, saying, I've heard the murmurings of the Israelites. Speak to them, saying, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread. You shall know that I am the Lord your God. So I heard it said a while back, we had the power team, these guys that are super muscular that kind of do feats of strength while they preach the gospel. And they talked about how today we eat all of our protein in the morning, and then we load up on carbs in the evening. But God sets it up where they're loading up on carbs in the morning and they're eating their protein in the evening. And so maybe if you're trying to get bigger, maybe try to think about that, that this is how the Lord set it up. You can do what you want with that. So in the evening, the quail came up and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a blanket of dew around the camp. When the layer of dew evaporated on the surface of the wilderness, there was a fine flake-like thing, as fine as the frost on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they said to one another, what is it? For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, this is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. So a couple things I forgot to say. The word manna actually just means, what is it in Hebrew? What is it? So when you say manna, you're actually just asking a question, what is it? And so that's what they called it. It's called manna. The other thing I forgot to say, this is historical, that's the area where we believe they crossed the Red Sea, about right here on our map. Still to this day, they have done archaeological finds where chariots, ancient Egyptian chariot wheels that would have been maybe the copper around the wood on these chariots are still at the bottom of the sea. That it's just further evidence that this was a historical event that happened, that these chariots, these horses were really washed away in the water, that what can last in water for that long still is there. And so it's just another cool fact about the Bible. This is what the Lord has commanded. Let every man gather as much as he needs. Take an omer for each person according to his number of people, of which people of you has in his tent. Let me read that again. Take an omer for each person according to the number of people each of you has in his tent. So take however much you want, but not enough to save for tomorrow, because there's going to be more for tomorrow. The Israelites did so, and some gathered much of it and some only a little. When they measured it with an omer, he who had gathered a large amount had no excess, and he who had gathered little had no lack. every man gathered according to his need and family size. So you can have as much as you want. So that's what they're saying. Moses said, let none of it be left overnight until next morning. But they didn't listen to Moses as usual. And they did not listen to Moses. And some left a supply of it until morning, and it bred worms and became foul and rotten. And Moses was angry with them. So they gathered it every morning, each as much as they needed, because when the sun was hot, it melted. And so it's kind of a lesson in like, when God's providing something for you, strike while the iron's hot, take it at that moment, because it may not be there. That opportunity may not be there later on. But also the Lord has new grace. He has new things for you each day. And you don't necessarily have to hold on to everything all the time. But the Lord is the God of new. The Lord is the God of mercies and grace that is new every single morning. And so it's also just as much of a miracle that if this manna rots and produces worms every single night, that you keep it to more than 24 hours. It's a miracle every single week that when they gather it on Saturday, twice as much even, that it doesn't mold that night or cause worms, but it would Sunday nights into Monday, because you're going to have new on Monday. So every single week, another miracle is happening. You know, it's kind of just like when they're fishing in the Gospels. They caught nothing overnight, and then they caught all that fish. As Jesus said, throw your net on the other side. They couldn't bring it in, hardly. It's as much of a miracle that they caught all of that in one net as it is that they caught nothing all night. That's relatively unheard of, not catching a single fish all night. It's equally as miraculous. And so, man, you can find, it's not just a miracle that the manna has come, but the manner in which the manna is treated then is just miracle after miracle. And so you can find these things all throughout the Bible. Now, on the sixth day, they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each person. All the leaders of the congregation came and told Moses. He said to them, this is what the Lord has said. Tomorrow is a solemn rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake and boil what you will bake and boil today. All that remains left over, put aside for yourselves to keep until morning. They put it aside until morning, as Moses told them, and it did not become foul, nor was it wormy. Again, a miracle. Then Moses said, eat that today, for today is the Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it out in the field. This is a huge thing for these people for the first time. You have to think they've been, we can easily say they've been subjugated for 200 years now, pretty much as long as the United States has existed. Imagine all of your family, everyone you've ever known, has been a slave. You have worked 7 days a week, 365 days a year, likely, bar none. You've just worked every single day. And now you're having a day off for the very first time. And not only one day off, a day off every single week for the rest of your life. This is, to a population that has been a slave for hundreds of years, this is hard to even grasp and wrap your head around. And it's hard to teach them. And you're going to see that as it happens. The pendulum usually swings way too far one way or the other. They can't just take a day off. And we're the same way today in the United States, where like we say that we have a Sabbath, and yeah, maybe we don't go to work, but oftentimes we do just as much work, or our lives don't look any different on Sunday, except for the fact that we go to church than they do every other day. And I don't know, there's something about taking the Sabbath seriously and not working, not even doing your hobbies, but like actually taking time to rest and actually letting yourself get bored for a few minutes. And so I think the Lord has just as much of a challenge teaching a 21st century church how to do that as he did the slaves coming out of Egypt. Now on the seventh day, some of the people went out together, but they found none. Oh, I missed verse 26. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will be none in the field. Verse 28, now the Lord said to Moses, how long do the people refuse to keep my commandments and my instructions? So he told them, don't go out on Sunday to look for it. Sure enough, they woke up Sunday morning and went out there and looked for it. And it's funny that the Lord and Moses have like this dialogue going back and forth where like Moses is like, they're complaining to me again. And God tells him, well, tell them this. And then the Lord comes to him later on and says, how long are your people going to be not listening to my instructions? And it's like, they kind of go back and forth of like, no, it's your people. And God's like, no, it's your people. And it's very funny to see them go back and forth on it. The Lord said to Moses, how long do you people refuse to keep my commandments and my instructions and my laws? See, the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore, he gives you bread for 2 days on the 6th day. Let every man stay in his place. No man is to leave that place on the 7th day. So the Lord's like, listen, you clearly don't know how to take a day off. So I'm going to give you some rules. Stay in your house. Stay in your tent. So the people rested on the 7th day. The house of Israel called the bread manna, for it was like coriander seed, white, and it tasted like flat pastry wafers made with honey. Okay, this has been recording this whole time. Just check it. The house of Israel called the bread manna. It was like coriander seed. Verse 32, Moses said, this is the word of the Lord, which the Lord commands. Let an omer of it be kept throughout your generations, so that they may see the bread with which I fed you in the wilderness when I brought you out of the land of Egypt. And so later on, we're going to see the Ark of the Covenant. Kind of looks like the way it did with what am I trying to think of? Indiana Jones, same idea. There's 3 items that exist in the Ark of the Covenant, and wherever it is today, I imagine these 3 things are still in there. You're going to have the 10 commandments that are in there. You're going to have Aaron's rod that budded. We're going to learn about that later on. But you also have, first thing we're being introduced to is they took a jar, an omer, like a big jar of manna. They put it all in there. Again, miraculously, that hasn't been eaten by worms in 3,000 years. This manna is put in the jar, and that will be put into the Ark of the Covenants. And it all has to do with bread, life, and law. And we'll see that loaf, life, and law. We'll see that later on. But okay. As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron eventually placed it in the presence of the testimony to be kept. The Israelites ate manna 40 years until they reached an inhabited land. They ate the manna until they came to the border of the land in Canaan. Now an omer is the 10th of an ephah. That doesn't really help us. It's like, I don't know. It doesn't really help us to know it's an ephah, but God is always going to provide. Even in times when we don't think God's going to provide, man, we have to step out in faith and pray prayers of faith, saying, Lord, I've followed your commands. I've asked you for the forgiveness of my sins. And you said that no sickness will come nigh my dwelling. You said that you won't send the sicknesses of the Egyptians on me, that I'll live well, or I'll live with my body being well, and I'll be healed. And so you have to stand on that promise. And as my grandfather would say, you have to hold God's feet to the fire on it, that this is a promise that God made to you. The Lord knows what you have need of. You don't, obviously we ask God for things, but the Lord is not ignorant of what you're going through. And so this is a great example of that God's always going to provide exactly as much as we need, and oftentimes as much as we could possibly want, because he's a good father. And so this is a great story to study out. There's plenty of things in here that even I didn't get to, but the purpose of this podcast is to help you understand the flow of the Bible. And so that's what we did here today. Again, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. We'd love to talk to you and try to answer some questions. But until then, if you could like and subscribe or leave a comment, that helps the algorithm do better and more people hear about us. And we look forward to seeing you again. All right. We'll see you next time.